What's up, guys? It's Keith Kelfus here on the Untrapped podcast. What really saddens me is that everybody can't hear this message, but the student is ready when the teacher will appear, and I'm here in the studio with Coach Rob. My friend Rob, I talk about in my videos. Right before this podcast, we didn't even plan on doing this. We were talking about wisdom and consciousness, and he said something that made me basically put my face in my hands and go, oh my God, that's it. That's it. In personal growth and development, there's one defining point that changes everything, and that becomes the first shovel that starts the stream, that trickles, that becomes a flow, that eventually becomes a rushing river of consciousness, where now you have a toolbox. You know what questions to ask to move your life forward and kind of administer your own estate and your inner affairs. And Rob is here right now. He's going to take over with this. Not completely. I'm interviewing him. But you said you found yourself as a young guy, you were standing on the edge of a building thinking about jumping off, and that was the first time. What, man? You said this in an interview before. You want me to redo the podcast? That's why people listen to me, because I put people on the spot. I interviewed a guy like a month ago, Michael Hinderleiter. He does $10 million a year. And he's got like 80 employees. And I put my hand on his shoulder. I go, so you went through some stress and some hard times. You were riddled with anxiety, you were telling me. Tell me about that.
I'm feeling it come up. I have spoke about this in a previous interview years and years and years ago. And since then, I have been more reluctant to talk about it because the conversation really isn't about me. And I don't want people to be distracted by my own anecdotal experiences. I'm much more interested in, providing what I feel has been the value discovered along my journey, that when I look out on the world and try to be a good servant or a good steward to my earthly brothers and sisters, to those that are struggling to find their way through kind of an infinite set of challenges that seem overwhelming, and maybe they just don't know how they're going to overcome them. They might even feel trapped behind those obstacles and behind those challenges permanently. And to try to share what I have found that has got me beyond those situations, where I came to a point in my life where I felt that was the solution. And clearly it was not. I just hadn't discovered enough about what there is to understand and what there is to do.
Sorry, my face is in my hands again because the very texture of how you describe things is amazing to me. An infinite set of challenges that can seem overwhelming. I remember a time in my life I used to reach out and call you all the time. I was trying to grow my marriage and grow my business, and I was suffering incredibly. And I didn't know how to, what you were talking about, being grounded in sacred stewardship. Once you get access to that grounding, when you find the ground, it's like you're swimming and you're kicking and you're hyperventilating. But at some point, you notice in the middle of this like black sea, there's like a little like an island underneath or something you can stand on, or you could just stop. Oh, I'm just standing here. When you find that thing, you become grounded. It's like you can channel everything through that and now answer. You know what I'm saying?
I do. And it can be challenging to talk about because through the generations and through the millennia, there has been a lot of psychological warfare by people with self-interests. And the results of that psychological warfare is that it makes it difficult to remove yourself from your own psychological constructs and find what exists out of the trappings of the mind. Because the mind is not who we are. It's a tool that we've been granted. And if we don't understand it that way, we have a condition which is called identification. We identify with the mind rather than see it as a tool and use it properly. Some people call it egocentrism, where you become egocentric. And like you said in our interviews, we have egomaniacs and people act egomaniacal or whatever. We have a concept of what that is, but that's insufficient for the definition of ego from a psychological perspective. So if we get trapped in that, we lose our ability to ground sufficiently through our whole body, through our whole being, and we're kind of trapped in our heads, trapped in the thinker and the ideas keep bouncing around and they can't resolve sufficiently for the challenges that we have biologically and what some would argue is spiritually, because the mind does not encompass those elements of our experience. Just like the map is not the territory, some people are familiar with that. So the map is an abstraction of a place. It's not the place itself. So our biology and our spirituality is the place, and our mind is an abstraction of it. It's like a map. And psychology, in many ways, is a mind map. So that's where some of those struggles seem like you can't get out of them, because your belief systems are puzzle pieces that you put together. They interlock.
Keep going.
And so as you create these shapes to these puzzle pieces and interlock them, you can become dependent.
You think that shit is real?
Yeah. That's when you get down to it. Right. Whoops. So that's like believing that a map is reality. But it might not include the rock that you're going to trip over on the path. So because it's not on the map, you don't see it, but then you're on your face, bleeding.
If I can dip in real quick and give you one example of this is, if you're upset about something, you're so obsessed with the story that you've created in your head that you keep replaying it over and over and adding it into justifying all the reasons why this is and how you feel this way and how it's so real to you. And then you might want to verbalize that to somebody. And so much around the content that if somebody would be like, hey, stop. Somebody's holding so strongly onto an ideal of something. Imagine when somebody comes to you with some type of drama they're having that's very real to them. But I'm not saying that they're wrong, but I'm saying you might be able to overarchingly see that they're just freaking out over something because they're approval seeking, or they feel inadequate, or they're questioning their worthiness, whatever it could be. So they're letting somebody walk all over them and take advantage of them, and they feel like they have no power and control over it. That's a very common one. And you could literally look at them from the outside with zero emotional attachment and see it, but they can't see it. And you say, quit telling me the story. And it's almost like you try to provide a solution or something, but they feel like they're dying to let go. They can't just let it go because their identity's enmeshed in it.
That's why they call it identification. Right, you have identified with the thinker, with the thought puzzles, but it's a tool. It's not who you are, right? Like there's a couple things that I do with Ego Edge with clients, and one of them is, who are you? Where are you? And what time is it? And there's only one answer.
Who are you?
Yeah.
I'm Keith Kelfus.
Whoops. Why would I say whoops?
Because you wasn't asking me my name.
Right, a name isn't you. It's a sound, or it's characters on a paper.
Or a label, or a title.
It's just a technique to differentiate you from others. That's not who you are.
So if you asked me that 20 times, I'd finally say, I am.
Right. So
I just am.
Yeah. That's it. If you add anything to it, it's something you have. I am angry. I am great. I am loyal. I am Keith Kelfus.
Just like I am, where are you? I'm in Michigan.
Right. Whoops.
I'm in Detroit.
Whoops.
I'm at my house.
Whoops.
I am here.
Yes. It's the only place you can ever be. You can never be there. And all those other words are abstractions. They're just maps. They're psychological constructs. So what time is it?
It's 12 noon.
Whoops.
You didn't ask me what the clock said or what time zone we're in.
Right.
What time is it?
Those are fictions. Those are mental constructs.
What do you mean? It's 6:30 p.m.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. I know what a 6 looks like.
So if you kept asking me that, I would finally say, well, the time is now.
Yes. And that's the only time it can ever be in reality.
Is now.
Yeah, you can think about the past, you can think about the future, but that's not happening. It's always been now. That's why you'll never see now on a calendar or today on a calendar.
I am here now.
I am here now. That's quantum reality.
It's combined with some breathing exercises.
Well, it's true, right? It's quantum reality.
I had a vision. I don't want to forget it. It came to me a couple minutes ago. So these exercises that you would do to me, or you could do to people, or you could do to yourself, hopefully, if you get the tools to catch yourself, to get yourself to presence. Well, you might require that. But there might be some days where you're just super present and you're clicking along and you were just, I am here now for like 36 hours. But then like bipolar, imagine on a chart, like it's like an S, it goes up and down like a sine wave. Like we're all like kind of bipolar. So you could have been totally on top of your game for like 3 days last week and you felt unstoppable. But now some things trigger you. And now you're going through all this hell and chaos. And the same things that wouldn't have gotten to you last week are now making you questioning your own sanity, or if you're a good husband or father, if your business is working, and now you're freaking out, right? So I just wanted to identify that it's not like a permanent state.
No, you just got trapped in psychological time. You're either remembering the past and how you think that's in the present, how you're experiencing it as if it's in the present, or you're thinking about the future and as if it's in the present. So, like, we could talk about the difference between fear, anxiety, and worry.
Yeah, let's do it.
Right, where fear is something you know and it's happening now. So think about that for a second. Something that you know and it's happening now. So fear is a present response.
Okay, I don't even have that often.
Right, because it rarely happens.
I mean, they think like, yeah, it rarely happens.
Yeah, rarely happens. We're a lot more civilized than we're led to believe. So that's fear. And then worry is something that's known, but it's not happening now, right? So you're rehearsing for fear.
Wow. Worry.
Worry is something known that's not happening now. So wait for anxiety. Anxiety is something unknown that's not happening now. So what does the ego try to do? Tries to define it. Oh, it's because, and it's because of that. And now you're creating a layer of worry over the top of your anxiety. So now if you're going to treat that, probably shouldn't use that word. If you're going to work with that and try to dissolve it or remove it from your experience, now you have to deal with worry first. Then you can deal with the anxiety, which is the underlying layer. So these are things where the mind gets in the way, but because we're attached to it, we're identified with it. It's our identity.
You don't think just going and making a whole bunch of money will solve it?
That's what we're led to believe. In a lot of ways, it can soothe it, but it doesn't stop it, right? Like a good trip to Hawaii can change your state for a while, but that's not the fix. Fix is dealing with the attachment, the identification.
More of the Untrapped podcast right after this. Looking to maximize your production in the field? Ballard Products has over 300 products that can help you get the most out of your efforts every day. Ballard Products. Whether you are looking to get a better cut, keep your gear on your machine, keep your expensive equipment clean and safe, or just get the most out of your machines, Ballard has you covered. Ballard Products. Jump onto our easy-to-use updated website at ballard-inc.com to get your gear ordered today. Keep grinding. Stay safe. And have a great season. Ballard. Make sure to use the code Keith10 to save 10% on our full line of gear. That's Keith10. The Untrapped podcast continues.
You know what, dude? I'm working like 80 hours a week for about 90 days straight. So that's about my tipping point where I start to get really... It starts out with irritation. I get very irritable. Then it just downhill from there. I know when it happens, and that's when I need to just slow down a bit. So it all came to a head the other day. It was like a Saturday. I'm running around doing errands, a million things going on. And all of a sudden, my hands started shaking. And I haven't had a panic attack in a long time. And I felt one coming on because I was so overwhelmed because I'm trying to do so much at once. And I'm like, maybe I got to eat something. I have to get food in me because I realized it was like 3:30 and I haven't eaten anything yet all day. Chipotle. So I run to Chipotle and I get a big ass steak burrito with a bunch of stuff. And I'm sitting there in Chipotle, about to go into a panic attack, just face smashing a fucking burrito.
Like a pelican?
Yeah, in this like unconscious state. And if you were to like videotape me or saw me, I'd probably look like some stressed out dude. And all of a sudden this thing hit me. I go, wait a second. I dream of becoming this super successful guy who has his shit together on the inside and on the outside. And I asked myself a question. I go, is this the man? Is this who I'm becoming? Is this the man I want to become? Does the man, and I had to, whoa, slow down, Kelphus, answer the question. So I like fathered myself, or I called it Sergeant Kelphus. And I said, answer the question. Is this who I'm becoming? I said, whoa, no. Would the man that you aspire to be like, that future you, or the men that you aspire to be like who have their act together, are they running around frantically having panic attacks, at least that you can see? No. Okay, that's a no. I was like, then what the F is gonna...
Well, how do you know that?
Well, I only know what they show you.
That's right.
Because I have heard from like Dr. Wayne Dyer, he'll call up some of these gurus in the interviews of his, and he said that he's literally, assistants pick up the phone and you'll hear the guru in the background not even know that they're screaming and throwing a tantrum and yelling at everybody in the background. And then he gets the guru on the phone and the guru is like, hello? Yes, it's me. And they're complete fucking basket cases behind the scenes and control freaks. And so I can imagine that in some cases.
That's because they're identified with the map. And so they don't have grounded relationships with reality. They have psychological constructs. And so when they're out of control, it's because they're psycho-emotionally dysregulated.
Psycho-emotionally dysregulated.
Yeah.
So when I was sitting there eating, I basically asked myself a series of questions. Where is this going to get you? Nowhere. So what is freaking out going to do besides pump a bunch of cortisol through your blood and stress you out? It's not going to do anything. Yeah, but I was gripped to it. But I'm going. And then I asked myself the final question. Does or will anybody care that you're freaking out? Is anybody going to like hold you and pamper you and tell you it's going to be okay?
Well,
no.
Your mom.
My mommy.
Do you have a mother that's empathetic to your child, to your childhood experience?
Whoa.
Which can be carried into adulthood and often is.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And so if she doesn't soothe you properly, and I say she, but I'm talking about the sacred feminine. You talked about sacred stewardship. You really haven't defined that. And that's going to be half of your development, your healthy development is...
That's amazing.
That feminine contribution. Then you should have a masculine contribution that makes sure that you don't become emotionally dependent on something outside of you.
I want to finish what I was saying. I'll wrap it up quick. I'll say, if you go home and you're freaking out, you're probably just going to get other people upset, right? So, okay, so what's this going to do? Nothing. So in that moment, I breathed and I calmed myself down 90%. And by the time I left Chipotle, I was just calm. And I was like, I had a little bit of the residue of it. And I was like, oh my God, I just literally knew what questions to ask to get myself out of a unhealthy state. And I know in previous versions of my life when I was younger, I could not get myself out of that state and I was freaking myself out. I mean, and I would reach out to anybody. I would call you, Rob, I'm having a panic attack. Calm me down. I'm trying to. So that's what I just wanted to finish saying.
Sure. Well, think about the phrase, you make me angry. Or an even worse one, in my opinion, is I am angry.
Yeah.
Why? Because when you add anything to I am, it's something you have, and you can't be what you have.
You're a savage. So pay very, very close attention to the language and what comes out of your own mouth and how you think and all that stuff.
So I have anger.
I have anger right now.
Yes. And what am I going to do about that?
Feel it?
Well, yeah, that's fine. But I'm just saying the psychology part, unraveling the psychological attachment, you're starting to take accountability.
Oh, so it doesn't root and mask itself and start coming out in weird ways where
It's not my identity. I'm not identifying with it. That's a map phrase.
Oh, so you say, I have anger.
Yes. So what am I going to do about that?
That's a good question.
Right. And it could be eat. Eating is often a fairly influential state change. Some people smoke, right? Some people play games. Some people go to the mall. It just depends. But if you're not careful, you wind up creating a ritual of change. So now you're dependent on something outside of you.
That's why.
That's why you get addicted.
Drugs, alcohol.
Right. When I work with people that want to quit smoking or eating, I have to ask them, what are they getting from it? Right? And they'll come up with these beliefs. They'll tell you what their beliefs are. They don't realize it, but they'll say confidence, right? Relaxation. Whatever they believe, it's giving them. But at the factory, they never sprinkled any confidence in there. You know what I mean? So how are you getting competence from the smoking. It's a psychological map. It's an abstraction of the reality. So why not just get rid of what's hurting you? Because cigarettes, I don't think anybody believes they're good for them at the biology level, right? They believe it's good for their competence, or it's good for their rewarding themselves, or the different beliefs they have. But they could remove the ritual and just go right to state management, because they're not getting those things from the cigarette. They just believe they are. So when you take them away, you try to quit, you believe you've just been disempowered. So it's idolatry.
That's why someone freaks out if they try to quit smoking or you take their cigarettes.
Because they're not psychologically prepared to be on their own. It's like, think of a kid that's been riding
They need the
their
ritual
bike.
to get to the state.
Yes. They become psychologically addicted to the ritual. The ritual is not the state. The state is the state.
Man, I feel horrible for people who are hooked on hard drugs and then they get off.
That's a tough road. It's a tough road, but a lot of people do it.
I'm so proud of the people that do.
Yes. That's part of sacred stewardship. Your body is an amazing gift, but if you don't steward it properly, it can become an amazing burden.
And that brings us today's sponsor, Essentia Water. I'm just playing. Essentia didn't sponsor this. I wish they would, but we're both drinking an Essentia Water.
Yeah.
30 bottles of water tested. Essentia ranked number 1. I'm drinking it. I tell Brian Fullerton, he starts drinking it. Wait, you told me about Essentia.
Oh, yeah.
Rob?
Yeah, I ran 33 tests. 33 commercial brands of bottled water, and I forget how many tests. It was like 16 or 20 tests per bottle, and Essentia ranked the highest and the cleanest. Fiji water was second.
And now everybody is drinking it, and it all started with you and then me making videos about it.
Yeah, you should, because it's a detox water, and don't get me started on health and stewardship.
My friend William, a tree guy, that's all he drinks now is Essentia Water. I'm not even going to get into it. It's just amazing.
Stick around as Keith returns with more of the Untrapped podcast in just a moment. Hey, if you're looking for what is probably the greatest software ever to run your business on, go to getjobber.com/Keith. You can create proposals, invoices, collect payments, even track your entire business directly on the Jobber smartphone app. And if you want to get a totally free trial of Jobber right now, open your browser, type in getjobber.com/Keith, and if after the trial you decide you want to sign up with Keith's link, you'll automatically get 20% off your first 6 months. So what are you waiting for? Go to getjobber.com/Keith. This is Untrapped with Keith Kalfas.
So define sacred stewardship.
Sacred.
This is where people can probably tune out if they're not careful.
Stewardship. Well, to be a good steward, is it here in the Black's Law Dictionary?
Probably. I haven't looked it up in that.
I'm going to Google it.
If you are the one with the duties and obligations, and then performing those duties and obligations successfully and efficiently is stewardship. So
Taking care of something.
If we're talking about a trust, then it's a trustee is the steward. If we're talking about a business, then it's like the CEO or the board of directors or the manager. They all have stewardship, duties, and obligations.
What about the sacred part?
That's the part where people start to tune out. When you talk about that, it's part of that psychological warfare that's been going on for so long that people have unfortunately devalued some of the deepest truths about who they are and what fulfills them, so that they feel fulfilled, so that things like anxiety and worry and misery and insecurity and doubt and panic, those types of things dissolve.
Dr. Joe Dispenza and Greg Braden both talk about when you get to a place long enough when you feel safe on a very deep level, and you can finally take that one big exhale where you go, and when you feel safe, and your amygdala is not firing a pump of cortisol, like you're not in fight or flight mode for a suspended period of time, you go into self-care, right? When you feel totally safe, all of a sudden something happens with your DNA. It starts unlocking these codes. It will start different formulas or something that allow you to expand into higher levels of consciousness, thinking, creativity, and now your genius starts to creatively flow. But when you're scared all the time, running around in panic mode like a rat on a wheel, you're basically like a primate. And that's when you're eating fast food, calming yourself down, and cheeseburgers and french fries and smoking cigarettes and working 90 hours a week and staying up all night fighting with your significant other, and then everything's a mess. So the question is, how do you build a successful life, so to speak? First, you have to define it, but also feel safe and be a sacred steward of yourself. Is it possible to do all that?
Well, it requires grounded consciousness to truly accept sacred stewardship, to understand what it even means.
So that's the big rock. It's a top priority. It's one of the core fundamentals, right?
Yeah, I just don't understand the rock reference. It's what
it's the most important thing that comes first, of not putting the cart before the horse, right?
Yeah, you want to build on a solid foundation. So think about the first thing you do when you're born. You inspire. And what's the last thing you do when you die?
Expire.
You expire. Right?
Yeah.
So your life cycle is inspire, expire, inspire, expire, inspire, expire, right? Over and over and over throughout your life. And so what do you place over that is aspire, right? You aspiration, which creates respiration. So there's a relationship there to being conscious of your life cycles and how to be grounded, right? You aspire. And what are you aspiring to? Well, you're aspiring to what is written on your heart and your consciousness. Like you've been given some gifts. You're not like everybody else. There's things you can do that you naturally are inclined to excel at, to aspire to. So when you accept that, you're going to have trouble because the world is going to want to force you into what? A job.
Yeah.
And what you aspire to might not be adequate to begin to rely upon. So I think that's a good message for parents, is to help their children with their aspirations so they have an earlier start. So you're going to struggle with your aspiration and your job. And sacred stewardship is taking that sacred gift, that uniqueness, that deep passion, that deep I amness, and accepting that that is something you have to give. Now, this isn't the entirety of sacred stewardship, but it is the acceptance of sacred gifts that have been granted and making use of them, right? In scriptures, it talks about the wasted talent, buried the talent and got punished. So there is a law form there, and we all can find it and we all can align ourselves with it. But if your psychology is trained to resist it or to redefine it as some kind of weakness, or, I'm trying to think of that saying, comfort food for the weak, then you miss it. And instead you get trapped in a life of mental fiction.
Mental fiction.
And I'm not saying that that is right or wrong or good or bad. It's only relative to the experience you will have and the experience others will have of you, right? And that's all it is.
And that's the good news.
And that is the good news. Because it can always be fixed. It's harder the more deeply identified your identification with your psychology is. But you always have the ability to improve upon it. You've been granted the resources to do it naturally. In fact, if you could peel off all of the mental fiction, that's what would be left.
Wow.
Right? Like, you don't have to find it or build it. You've already been given it. You've just accepted ideas and ideologies and belief systems. You've co-created them with, don't know how much I want to say or how to say it, but let's just say very powerful people with self-interest. It's the psychological warfare to get you to be psychologically attached.
They don't want you to be awake.
Right. They don't want you to accept your sacred stewardship and to understand what that means and why that is powerful and healing and healthy and intended for you.
Intended for you.
Yes. So anyways, maybe that's enough for now.
Dude.
Maybe too much for now. But that's what you wanted to talk about. Try and skim that surface a little bit and
I love that.
Scrape a little and see what comes off.
Scrape a little and see what comes off. Oh, man. All right, if you listen to this podcast, hit me up on DM, whether it's on Instagram at Keith Kalfas, Facebook at Keith Kalfas, or send me an email. Tell me what you got from it. Also, please go to Apple Podcasts, Untrapped, and leave the podcast show a well-worded 5-star review. It really helps us out and bumps the show up. The ratings, we just crossed 300,000 downloads. We hit number 37 in the entrepreneur category very briefly on Apple Podcasts, which was a huge deal. As always, thanks again for listening, and thank you, Rob.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Hopefully it all works out. It can be challenging subject matter.
It is, because it's what?
It's counterculture.
Damn, everything you say. All right, later, guys.